Welcome, everyone, to the Crazy Canuck Truckin' Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts. I am the Size Matters Dakotan, Bridget. I'm here with
Crazy Canuck Dave. Hey, everyone. We are back again. How are you doing, Size Matters?
Doing well. And the best part about being back this go around is we get to have a repeat guest, and that doesn't happen very often. Consider this the sequel to our earlier podcast. How's that sound? But before we get there, I have a few things and reminders. Please like and follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can reach us through crazycanooktruckin@gmail.com or our website, Crazy Canuck Truckin'. Follow us on all sorts of social media platforms because we'd love to have you there. More importantly, Dave, any fun things that you've learned or heard since we were last together?
Ooh, that's a. Oh, you want the clean version?
Yeah, I was hoping for the comments that you made or that you got from followers and listeners, please.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, let's do that one. So you remember Kelsey Banks?
Quite well, thank you.
The agronomist from Eastern Ontario.
Yep.
That kicked Bob to the curb, her brain tumor.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, beat up Bob. Don't be a Bob. And so listener, watcher actually, because he responded on YouTube, he said, his name is Timothy McNutt, and he says, very touching and awesome story from Kelsey Banks. Had a tear in my eye at a few parts in the story. So that was pretty cool to get that comment, and I've watched it a couple of times since we've done it, just because I get a lot of inspiration from our guests, and it's really cool for me to go back and listen, because sometimes I don't listen that well, because I'm busy trying to think of the next question or going through things, and I find things that I go back and I listen. Oh yeah, that was awesome. That was really good. So, Kelsey is an amazing young lady, and we are very honored to have her on our show. And I love how she is trying to perk up the people at radiation when she's the patient.
Right. She's there to bring the smile and the cheer.
Yeah.
Now, here's one of the fabulous things. We're talking about Kelsey as an excellent guest. And as I mentioned earlier, we have an excellent repeat guest who's back. Again, the sequel to the first. So, David, do you want to introduce who we have today, or do we just let him introduce himself?
Well, I want to, this is kind of special, so I'm going to say a little something before he introduces himself, because normally, if we have a really long interview, I will cut it into two parts and, we'll kind of break it up and do it that way. But this time, after we had our last interview, then you and I were talking Size Matters, and like, you know what? There's way too much. We need to do another one. Should we do it later? Or should we do it now? And you said, let's do it now. Get it, strike while the iron is hot. Keep using the oven while the oven is still warm. And so who do we have back with us? You want to tell us who you are?
Well, yeah, I want Jacob to introduce himself again. Where did he leave off?
Yeah. Well, I'm Jacob Buchert. I live in southern Alberta. My wife and I and our three kids, we farm, ranch, and have a feedlot out in this part of the world. So we love agriculture, and so it's a big part of us. And I was on here last week, I guess, talking about our journey from Mexico to Canada. So what do you guys want to hear about this week?
You had a very traumatic event involving your daughter a number of years ago. And the way I've heard you tell that story before is incredible. And we share some similar views on these things that we go through in life and what they're meant for us. I believe we're very similar in our views on that. So take it away, Jacob. Tell the listeners what I am talking about.
When my middle child was 5 years old, I had just bought some more land. My wife and I, was the first time we bought our own land. And so, as we do on the farm in spring, we put in too many hours and not enough sleep. And I'd always been cognizant of kids running around and watching them. And so I ended up going home for dinner, and the kids were out playing in the garden. And so when I came back out, I looked over and they're still playing in the garden. It was, a good 300 feet away. So I jumped in my truck and I started backing up, turning my front of the truck towards the garden so I could see them. And as I turned to look over, my daughter's gone. And at the same time, as I notice she's gone, I feel a bump. And absolutely shook me. Like, I have no idea where she's at. So I stopped real quick, jumped out, tried to figure out, realized I had her pinned underneath the front of my truck, jumped back in the truck, continue to move off. And then a whole life-changing event right there, right? Like, our lives completely changed from that moment on. All my plans that I had are now completely different. They were not the same plans that I made in the morning. And so, as I tell this story, I'm going to kind of tell you about some neat things that happened that I never realized till after. But so, we got the ambulances to come out and they picked her up and they took her to the small hospital, and then they didn't know what to do with her. So they took her to the big hospital and they still didn't know what to do with her. And they just didn't know the damage that there could be. And so finally they ended up flying her to a big center, to a children's hospital, where they did numerous operations. The truck had driven over her pelvis, so it had broken her pelvis completely in 2 spots, or was it, I think 3 spots actually, completely. Like, a leg socket was broken open, the front of her pelvis was broken, and then the rest of it, the guy said, it's like you take a rock to a windshield, it was just shattered. And so they had to put all this metal in her to get her pelvis to line up again. They had to take her colon and bring it out the side because they couldn't have her go in the washroom because the pressure would break the pelvis. Her back was just shredded from the gravel because it happened on the gravel. She had all kinds of lines and stuff into it. So it was that all happened in 24 hours. That's probably the hardest day of my life, for sure. But what I learned from that a little bit, and there's a lot more to the story that I'll get into, but 8 days before it happened, every Sunday we'd go to church, and 8 days before it happened was a Sunday. And our fire department, I was a volunteer firefighter, they actually had a first aid course that I had to go to. So I skipped church to go to the first aid course. And so I learned about injuries and what to do and how not to move the patient and what to look for and who caused internal bleeding. The day before it happened, we were actually at my wife's aunt and uncle's visiting, and we went to their church, and the guy talked about how really hard things come into our lives. And even though we hate them at the moment, they will strengthen us if we have good attitude and if we can see the positive in it. And I remember bobbing my head to that sermon, not knowing what was going to happen 24 hours later. And it was so easy to sit there and like, oh yeah, no, I totally agree with this, right? And then 24 hours later, here we are in this situation. So I never moved her. When we got to the one hospital where the children's was going to pick her up, the spine board that they brought to put her on was actually for a big child. And so they decided to keep the little spine board that she was on that came from the local ambulance. And so they took her with that. And then when she got to the city, when we started undoing the spine board, she started hemorrhaging. So I don't know if she would have made it in my yard if I moved her, but if they would have moved her in the spine board in the hospital, she wouldn't have made it. She would have bled out to death at that point in time. So crazy coincidence, right? Like, how does that happen? How did that all line up? Like, it boggles my mind to this day of how I had the first aid course that told me not to move her. And then we didn't move her on the spine board, and she makes it right to the hospital where there's 5 surgeons taking her apart and fixing her, right? So that was just amazing. after they got her all back together, of course, my question is she going to walk? Is she going to live? You know, and all the doctors would tell me, we don't know. Children are resilient. And the one doctor finally said, you know, I'm just a mechanic. I didn't make her. I don't know what's going to happen. I do my best. And I thought, you know, I've never, because we rely so much on doctors, we want them to give us the answers. And here's a guy telling me he has no idea. He can do the best he can, and that's what we're going to end up with. And that, at the time, wasn't enough for me, but that's all you could do. But she didn't move her legs, she didn't move her toes. And so another weird coincidence was the neurologist that did all the MRIs and everything. He says, you know what's really cool is tomorrow across the road at the big hospital, we're having a neurology clinic, and the top guy out of the US, out of California, that coined the term that she has is going to be there, and I'm going to present your daughter's case to them to see what we can do. I'm like, how does that happen? And I never discovered all these
coincidences
until after, but it's like, how does that happen? So he takes everything there. That was a Thursday, comes back Friday morning and gives me the news that the chance of her walking are slim to none. Like most people with those type of injuries never walk again. She might get some mobility at some point in time, but to see her running and walking, that's going to be pretty hard. And so that was a hard morning for me. And then on top of that, because she couldn't really speak, she had a tube down her throat and down her nose into her throat. And, you know, I just remember saying to her, like, I am so sorry. I love you so much. And she says, you know, at 5, she doesn't know any better. At 5, she says, but Dad, if you love me, why'd you run me over? And then that was it. I was crushed. And so I had to leave the room. Like I couldn't do it. And so I left the room for a bit and ended up, the pastor at the church and a couple of the elders had come out that day, and they just wanted to pray over her. And I says, you know what? Right now, I'll take anything. Like, we'll light candles in the room if that makes her better, kind of thing. And because that morning I was already told she's probably never going to walk. And she asked me, you know, if I loved her, why would I run her over? And so I don't know how much more crushed you can get than that, but that was pretty tough.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty tough person, but that put me on my knees.
But she's your daughter. And like you said, she's 5. She's just asking the question because she doesn't know what to say. And kids are very honest.
Yeah. No, like I said, it was a tough day. But from there, it just got better. So after they prayed over her, she was out because she was on heavy morphine. And I just sat there and like grabbed her hand just to hold it to her, just sitting there. I hadn't slept for probably 3 days because I was not leaving her side for anything. And I slept in the chair. The nurses, the psychologists, they all try to get me to leave or talk to me. And I'm like, this is where I need to be. So as I grab her hands and the nurse is standing there, she moves her toes and her feet, like just like a reflex.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that was weird. And the nurse says, did you see that? And I'm like, I saw that. And so she runs out, gets the doctor, comes back in, and the doctor is trying to get her to move. She can't move a toe. She can't move anything. And so finally he says, well, maybe it's just a weird reflex. Like, we don't know. And I said, I don't know why, but the weight of the world is just lifted off my shoulders. She's going to walk. She's going to be fine. And he says, you can't know that. And I'm like, I do. And I don't know why. I can't tell you why, but I just feel like she's going to be fine. And so then from there, my parents come out that afternoon and my dad convinced her for $5 to move one toe. He says, I don't want to leave and to move one toe. Like, I just want to see something. And so you can see her. She's just like concentrating. She wants this $5 so bad. So
yeah, grandpas can motivate kids. Grandpas can do that.
So yes, finally, we can. She was one toe, just a tiny bit. And, you know, over the next week or so, things kept getting better. She was ended up moving her toes. And, you know, we spent 79 days at that hospital. All but 2 days I was beside her in a little cot, mattress about this thick. So good thing I grew up tough, because it wasn't that hard to sleep there. But it was awesome because she trusted me, and so I was her full-time nurse. Like when it came to taking out stitches, she always asked if I could do it. Medicine, that kind of stuff, arts and crafts, anything that was going on. You know, I was part of everything, part of her healing. We had lots of visitors. We had a lot of fun as well. Like you would think, how can you have fun when you're doing that? But we did. Like, there was times she didn't like me and she was mad, and I'd leave the room for an hour and I'd come back and she goes, I am so glad you came back. I missed you. And, like we needed that little bit of a break. But the bonding that we did that period of time was absolutely amazing. The hospital staff, they put us in the biggest room on that floor. They absolutely loved us. Every day we had a new nurse. So I finally complained. I'm like, can we just get the same nurse 2 days in a row? And they're like, it's hard because we see so many people suffering, and everybody loves your room because you guys are sarcastic and you're funny and you're like our uplifting room. So people want to go in there. So every day we have nurses request your room. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then my daughter, she was so inspirational of the people around her. There's a young girl there feeling sorry for herself. And then when Jessie finally got to walk the first time, when they took all the bracing off, she says, I'm going to walk down the hall. And whatever they call those people that work with you when you can't walk.
Physical therapists or occupational therapists?
Nope, exactly. So the physical therapist is like, we're not looking to walk. We're just looking to stand. And she's like, I'm not getting out of bed if I can't walk. And she did. Nice. She took like walkers. She took like, I don't know, she probably walked about 5 feet. That's all she could do because she hadn't moved in 80 days. But yeah, I still have pictures of that. And it was probably the most incredible, there was her first steps in life, and then there was these steps. And they were just so incredible to see. And then inspired the kid next to her that in the other room that was feeling sorry for themselves. And I remember them saying, like, if Jessie can do it, I can do it. And
yeah,
it was just amazing. It was an amazing time. I always say I would never do it again, but I don't know. I mean, I didn't have a choice, but I don't know if we would be where we're at today. The lessons that we learned as a family, individually out of that, I don't know how we'd ever get to where we're at today if it wasn't for those times. Like the bond in our family is unbelievable because of that time. So
that was something that you told me, was you don't ever want your daughter to go through that type of pain again. But what you grew from that as a family made up for all the physical pain in so many ways. And I thought that was really fabulous that you recognize all that. And I can't imagine how hard it was, not only for you and Jessie, but how does your wife and your other 2 kids fare through all of that?
I mean, that was really hard. Like, if you ever get the chance to donate to the Ronald McDonald House, I don't know if you guys have them in the States, but they're absolutely the most amazing thing for us because we lived out in the country 3 hours from the hospital. So my wife and our son, who was 6 or 7 at the time, I guess he'd been 7, and our youngest, there was 1, they all moved into the Ronald McDonald House. And the people that would donate food and, even tickets to go to a concert or something, that was just absolutely amazing. The hardest part about the Ronald McDonald House was that we got to meet so many other families that were going through situations and things like cancer and stuff like that, with a 2-year-old. And those are the hard times. Like, we knew we were getting better and we were, leaving. And then now you all of a sudden you meet these families that day to day, they don't know if they're leaving. And that made it really hard. The situation even harder, right? So we just had, try to support Ronald McDonald House as much as we can. Hats off to them. It's such an amazing building to have, or I don't know how we would do it without it. Like, there's just no way we could stay in a hotel. We had an amazing community. Like, I volunteered a lot, and so I don't know if that helped, but our little community of 300 people, they started up in an account, and I think within like a week, they had $12,000 in there if we needed it for anything. Like people just called in and donated money. There was no fundraising, and it just
made a difference.
Because people would show up every day, like, can I drive a tractor? Can we do something to help on the farm? And so just seeing how people love you, it's incredible. And I think you never see that until something like that happens. And like I said, I hated going through it, but we learned so much from that time that I don't know how else you have learned some of these things other than listening to people like me talk about it from my experience. But yeah, I talk a lot, so you guys probably have lots of questions.
Well, I have some.
We're supposed to be joking, and here I'm just bringing it down.
Not at all, because I think your discussion has been very, I don't want to say lighthearted, but you tell your story in a way that makes people realize how good it could go. The outcome could have been vastly different, right? You, like you said, all the cuts from the gravel, there could have been problems with a widespread infection, but you had coincidences that lined up to make things go very well. And you learned some lessons from it that don't make you bitter, but bring out the positive. You know, for people just to show up at the farm and say, I have no idea how to do this, but how about you let me drive a tractor today? I can only imagine the look on your dad's face of, thanks. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. No, they were really overwhelmed. Like, so many people offered help, or even neighbors would offer to come and see things for us. And that was really good. And like I said, I mean, there wasn't a day somebody would call us. Somebody started a Facebook page, and, we posted progress as it went, because, day to day, we didn't know, like, we were going to, if x-rays make you glow in the dark, she would glow in the dark, because we had so many x-rays and MRIs, making sure everything was lined up, because it was like a big bowl of mush down there. And so they had to move everything around, make sure things were lined up. So, fast forward 12 years later, she's 18. She has some complications, some surgeries that we've had to do to help her with some stuff. Long and short of it is, probably the hardest thing for her is, I don't know if you know that the urethra in a female is about the width of your pinky, and that matches will off her bladder. And so when they stented that back on, it never worked. That muscle never worked. And so she can't go to the washroom like a normal person. And so they gave her what's called a Metrofa, which is, I've never heard of it. Most people haven't. So whenever we go to the doctor, I got to explain this to her. But they take your appendix, fold it like a taco. So if you like tacos, we're like,
yeah.
Sewed the ends of it up, sewed it to the back of her belly button and into her bladder. And then they run a tube from her belly button through the appendix into her bladder to drain her bladder. And then once that heals, it's like an earring hole. It stays there. So as long as she uses it all the time. So that's the only way she can avoid. She uses catheters about this long, 5 or 6 a day. And that's probably the most expensive part for us. But everything else, they've pretty much been able to fix over the years. So an amazing medical system.
And just remember, just think how far she has come from the age of 5 until now she's 18. What might progress for her by the time she's 30? Things could still change in advance, and you never know what new breakthrough might happen that'll make her life even better. So I wouldn't count her out yet, because I think she's done pretty well since 5.
Yeah. Well, and her heart for people is incredible. Like, she loves people. As a family, we typically do one Mexico trip a year. And so one will be like sitting at the beach, and one might be a house building mission trip down there somewhere. And, but she'll, on her own, she'll volunteer at the soup kitchen or different places like that. So she'll just go out and do stuff, like not me coaching her or nothing. She just all of a sudden is like, hey, I'm doing this. And she'll just, every Wednesday she'll go and do something. But her love for people is incredible. And I think a lot of it has to do with just what she's learned, right? It's these tough times that build you, weight you down.
So if I can maybe put this in a different perspective, maybe that'll help. I have an uncle that when I was in college, he contracted what we thought was the flu, pneumonia, etc. And he actually wound up with a situation that his flesh on his fingers and toes and like his extremities, even his nose, his flesh was being eaten by a bacteria. Okay. And so to this day, and that happened when he was in his 40s. So to this day, he no longer he's an amputee from the knee down. And he doesn't really have fingers. He has more like what looks like 2 lobster claws. And that's how he functions. So he can like grab a mug with a handle on it, that type of thing. But much like your daughter, he will do anything for anybody else. He is just simply happy to be here and be alive. And he recognizes that. That happened in his 40s. It happened to her and her at 5. She just has a longer time to make that up with people and be happy and share with them. So I think I'm putting them both in the same category.
Yeah. It's probably my favorite thing in the world is to watch people that have suffered and watch how hard they work at things that we take for granted. You know, I had a guy that had his arm caught in something when he was little, and he basically had his thumb and one finger that would function, and his arm was like half the size of a normal arm. And he got a job at the farm, and when I first seen it, I'm kind of thinking, oh man, how much is he going to be able to do? He would always outwork everybody. And man, could he drive a truck. Like, he was one of our truck drivers, and could he shift? Like, it was just incredible. And I just love when people have that drive to do the things that we take for granted. And so I think most people that when they want to have a lot more to give than what they give, but they don't just because they don't have to, right? And we're all in that. Like, we don't know that it's sunny until we wake up in the morning. It's been dark all night. If it was always sunny, we wouldn't appreciate the sunshine.
Right.
If you don't look for it, you'd never know it was sunny, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Like, if you keep your eyes closed, it could be sunny and it could be a beautiful day. And if you're not receptive to it, you just don't know. Mm-hmm. And that's our problem often as people, is we don't open our eyes to see what's around us and what's in us and what's in others. You know, that's a lot of times we just need to open our eyes, you know, and it's very special to be able to do that and to see all the good that can go on. I was at a funeral yesterday, and the lady that passed away, she, and this is the truth about her, is that she could not see anything negative in people. And no matter what was going on with her kids, you know, sometimes, you know, kids get a little out of hand and different things happen, and she would never see that. She would just see the positive and see what that person's going to be in the future. And it was a couple of her kids talked about that at the wake, was that Mom taught us to see the good and never focus on the negative. And it takes a work, you know, to be like that. Some of the older people that were her peers said, yeah, she learned that. It wasn't something that she was born with, right?
Right.
Yeah.
She learned it, and she passed it on to her children and her children's children.
So speaking of something that, you know, that learned behavior. So Jacob, you and your daughter have a fabulous relationship. Your whole family feels stronger. How about you? How long did it take you until you felt like you were okay after all this? Because your dad, you didn't want any of this to happen to your little girl.
You know, like I call it coincidence, but I mean, honestly, I really believe that God had a hand in this, because it's just, you know, I believe in one or two coincidences. To me, there was just too many. And I tell people all the time, you know, I don't believe that. Some people think everything's a miracle, and I always say, well, no, life's got a pattern and it follows it and things happen. But then this really shook me. It's like, there's just too many coincidences. So there's still days I back up my truck and I might, you know, right now I have cameras and sensors everywhere, and I look harder than ever. But it's been 12 years, and there's still days I back up my truck and I might back over a rock or something and feel it, and I'll park right there, and I'm not okay. And it takes me a bit to get, and and every time I take her to an appointment, we took her to, we had some surgeries this summer, and there was an appointment where they weren't sure if she's ever going to be able to have kids. And then again, you think, man, I took that away from her. That I did that. And so then you have to, you have that moment with yourself where you beat yourself up. But then instead of staying there, which is easy to do, you have to find the good and start focusing on the good. And she's so good at that. Like, she's absolutely fabulous at it. She's like, don't worry about a God. We'll adopt. We'll do this. I'll figure it out. And I think she probably inspires me more than I inspire her. But it's she's just, like I said, she's so incredible. And so don't know if I'll ever completely be over it, obviously. But over time, like I said, I love focusing on the good and what we learn from it. So the majority of the time, I'm good. But I mean, obviously, it took time. It wasn't an overnight thing. But I've also been able to. I had a friend of mine that lost his son a couple of years ago in a farm accident, and it was just a freak accident. The son was wearing protective gear for hearing and stuff, because what the job he was doing was loud. And he ventured out and in front of a loader, or the loader, I think the loader couldn't stop, and the kid didn't hear it, and 11-year-old kid. And I was able to, probably one of the few people that was able to really talk with him and help him through that, because of the experiences that I had gone through. And so, there was times where I can use it to help other people that are suffering, right? So just because he felt like I could understand. And so we spent quite a bit of time together talking about stuff and that. So I don't know. I think if you find ways, there's always something that you can do to use it. So
there's go ahead, David.
Have you forgiven yourself?
I have. 99% of the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair.
It doesn't always seem to be such a clear-cut thing, does it?
Yeah. No, it doesn't. Yeah. I mean, she's forgiven me, I think, so.
She no longer says, but why did you run over me, Dad? Right?
She only said that once. Like I said, that was a tough day.
Yeah.
Do you have... Jesse?
I don't know. Is she gonna dare join us?
She walked into my office here. I think she should come and say hi.
Yes, she should. Absolutely. Come on down.
She's 18 at this point. She's like, good Lord, Dad, what?
So
there she is. Hey. I'm David, the Crazy Canuck, and there's Size Matters. Bridget is on there as well.
I'd be the one that mailed you the chocolate-covered potato chips.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
She cooks to get everybody's favorite.
What's that, Jacob?
Sorry, I think I talked over Dave. I said they don't even taste like potato chips. That's the weird part. They just taste like chocolate.
Mm-hmm. That's okay.
Jesse, I had told your dad that the connection that you two have is very special to me, because I was in a farm accident when my wife was 7 months pregnant. And I was told that the best case scenario was that I would be a vegetable. And, but I would probably die that night. And obviously I didn't die, because I'm not a ghost. I'm wearing a white shirt today. But, and then I should have lost my eye, and other things should have happened. And 2 months later, my daughter was born, and we named her Vivian, which was for two reasons. Vivian means alive, And my first nurse that was tasked with keeping me alive and to keep me talking because it was a severe head injury, her name was Vivian. And her second name is Joy. And so for the first several months of her life, I wasn't able to do anything except sit in my lazy boy chair. And so when my wife gave birth, the hospital was the small country hospital that I went to first and got transferred out of. Same kind of thing where I got transferred around. And so they knew me, and they gave me a bed right beside my wife because I couldn't sit for very long. It's only 2 months since my accident. And so I was laying in the bed beside her in the maternity ward. Fortunately, it wasn't busy. And so from that time on, then she's always been my little girl. And she couldn't, when she was little, she couldn't say sweetheart because she heard my wife calling me sweetheart. And she couldn't say that, so she always said wheatheart. And I got her a hat one time that has Wheatheart augers on it. They're just the Wheatheart auger logo. And she's 30 years old this year. And I'm 30 years old, my second birthday. And so that was kind of the condensed version, Jesse, of why I really wanted to get your dad back on again to talk to us. So it's very special. It's very special what you've been through, and it's very special what it has done in your family. And it's not always fun dealing with the after effects of severe injuries, but what it does inside, what it has done in me, and I've had a couple of head injuries since then, which has made things worse. And but what it's done inside me and helped me with my family and with everything else going on, it's immeasurable, So I'm so glad you walked into the office, because that's so cool to say something to you, Jesse. It's very, very special. Very special.
So what are things that you want to say, Jesse? Anything? Is this the time to give the goods on your dad? I mean, throw out the dirt. People are listening.
He gives your mom a hard time. We know that much,
Yeah.
So
I mean, what do you want for Christmas? Because now it's going to be publicized. Bring it on.
I'm not really sure. I kind of forgot this was happening. I just came in here for money.
Nice.
I'd ask for twice as much now.
Yeah, at least. I see a new car coming.
Yeah, we're not that close.
Oh, yeah. You feel the distance all of a sudden,
Go to Grandpa for that. I hear he's good for it. So.
What do you find, Jesse, has been the biggest impact on you?
I would say obviously my accident, but I just took it as challenges to make myself stronger. I never saw it as, oh, I can't do this because this happened to me. I saw it as kind of, oh, I can't do this now, but let's see what I can do in 3 months. Or let's see how hard I can work to see an improvement.
That's so awesome. I have a grandson that has CP, cerebral palsy, and he joined the running team last year. And that's not a very easy thing for somebody with cerebral palsy. And he was 9 years old at that run last year, and he was the only one. He was the only one of the whole group that kept running during the whole thing because he was so determined. I see that determination in you. That's very, very cool.
So as we've talked about all sorts of things today, I think the common thread here has truly been determination. How to decide to move forward, because you do. right? You don't just decide that you're going to struggle. You decide that you're going to move forward and do good things and do better. So as we near the end of that time, my question would be to both Jacob and to you, Jesse, is what else do you want people to know? And again, here's the chance to give the goods on each other, but what else do you want people to know as we wrap up today?
I don't know. Me and my dad personally have gone through a lot of challenges with my accident. And I think that's just brought us closer together more. I don't think we would have this much of a relationship if it wasn't for it. Yeah, because me and my mom aren't that close just because I never really spent the time with her that I've spent with my dad. And I just think that challenges and stuff like that just help you in life.
Agreed.
Do you have a favorite story that you think back on when you're traveling somewhere, something that happened on a trip somewhere that has always stood out in your mind, Jesse?
Not really. My favorite memory with my dad though is we used to wake up at 6 or 7 and we just ride in the tractor all day together and be lots of fun. I didn't have a phone, I didn't have electronics. We would just talk the entire time.
That's all right.
Was he practicing all the sarcasm on you?
That's where I get it from.
Yes. Yes, you do, child. You do. So, Jacob, we've let Jesse talk. What about you?
I used to buy these Calgary Flames tickets, and we'd go to a lot of games, and I'd take my kids. And Jessie Lynn, I don't think she knows anything about hockey, but she'd always love to come, and we'd go to the games. And I didn't know this, but apparently, as we leave the game, we have to put Adele on and blast it for I don't know how many miles, but way too many miles for my liking. But and I'm supposed to sing to it. I don't even know the words. And you're gonna back me up on that. I don't know the words to any of the Adele stuff. So yeah, so I always thought that was funny. Every time we leave the city, we'd have to blast Adele in the car on the way home. So.
Is that, Jesse, because you know that's a song he doesn't know and that would make him a little embarrassed, or, getting him back a little bit?
He knows the words. He just won't admit it because he sings with.
It's not true.
So now we know that Jacob knows all the words to teenager girl songs, right?
Actually, I got to say, Jesse, that one thing that you're missing on this whole deal is that as a parent, the very best part of being a parent is tormenting your children. So good luck on getting him to sing.
I think it's been the other way around.
Oh, I like that.
Why be normal, right? Mm-hmm. Why do things like everybody else?
Yeah. I don't know. Nothing really embarrasses me, so I just try to embarrass him.
I can vouch for that.
It's fair enough.
I have a couple of kids that like trying to do that. It doesn't work well with me, but it works with my wife. So,
yeah. So thank you again, everyone, for being here today. This has been great. And it's a pleasure to meet you, Jesse. It's nice that we've gotten to know your dad over the last few weeks as we've all interacted, but just thank you all for wanting to talk and to share. And we appreciate that very, very much. So I look forward to seeing if we get questions or comments from folks who've listened, because then we'll bounce them your way for responses too. So any last comments from you, Dave, before we wrap up today?
Well, that was extremely special. Thank you so much for coming by and asking for money from your dad. Make sure you ask for a lot more money. And he was telling us he has lots of money, so
I don't think that's the case. Yeah. I don't cattle.
So thank you, everybody.
Not a good thing.
What's that?
I said I have to feed them North Dakota corn because we don't have any feed grains in our area this year because of the drought. So we're getting corn out of North, South Dakota, and Minnesota right now. Train load after train load. So it's incredible. like 2 million tons are coming out of your country. So
Do your cows sound different when they're eating North Dakota grain?
They don't say
Yeah,
hey.
yeah. Actually, I had a question for Bridget. And maybe I'm wrong out here in the West, but isn't it Canuck? She keeps saying Canuck, but isn't it Canuck? Crazy Canuck trucking?
Maybe it should be, but I'm going to use my Southern Canadian accent when I do Crazy Canuck.
She always does that to me. You know, she doesn't like saying my name properly. I think it's, you know, some hidden way to get at me or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, it's not a semi, it's a semi, and I'll make a list of other things that are wrong and let you know what they are later.
I'm used to that.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. It's been a lot of fun.
You.
Thank you very much, Jesse, for coming by. And reminder to all of our listeners to like it, share it, talk about it, talk to us about it, and we'll feature as much as we can, and let us know what you like, and we'll keep doing it. So thank you, everybody.